So again, in this video we're going to make a few tweaks to our navigation section, and remember the last few videos and this one are just showing you lots of different ways that you can present your navigation content. Not saying that one's better than the other, they'll all be more suitable to your particular website, but I wanted to show you lots of different tweaks that you could do. So here we're going to add an image to the header, and then we're going to use the float property to align the content so that we can have the image and the navigation content on the same line. So if we have a look at our HTML and our live preview here, I've changed the style of the windows, so hopefully it's easier to see the effect that these properties have, because we need to see how this navigation section is going to move across the page from left to right and so on. So we need to think carefully about where we're going to place our image. Do we want it to be inside the header tags that we have, or do we want it to be inside the nav tags? And because on this row here we've got this background color, this is applied if we look in our CSS, that's applied to our nav section. That gives us a good clue that we want to put our image inside those nav tags. And you can think about these nav tags as a wrapper or a container, and everything that's inside those is contained within those tags, so we can constrain it, we can use our CSS to align content relative to each other within those nav tags. So that means up here I'm going to put in my image tag above my unordered list, which starts there with my UL tags, but below my opening nav tag. So down here I'm going to start typing image, and I already found an image earlier. I downloaded it to my the same folder where I have everything else, into my images folder. So I go to source, src, type equals, click on or press enter to select the images folder, and I named it mountainlogo.png. Now it's really important if I click on that preview there that I've chosen a PNG file. That's because PNG supports transparency as a background, so if you look closely at the image you can see the grey and white squares in the background, which indicates that it's transparent. So that means that the colours that I have in the background of my website will come through. If I had a JPEG, for example, it doesn't support transparency, so that would probably be white, that background area, and I wouldn't get that blue colour from my background colour on my website showing through. So PNGs are really important. Then of course at the end of that image tag I'm going to close it with the closing bracket, and that should be enough now that we have our image in place. But as you can see, it's really big and it has pushed down our navigation elements just a little bit. So we're going to have a look and see how we can fix that up. To do that we're going to go over to our style.css, and we're going to create a new rule for all of the images within our nav section. So hopefully this is becoming familiar by now. Because I have the images inside the nav section only that I want to affect, not the other ones, my CSS rule is nav img, and then I'm going to use a new property. I'm going to put float, and I'm going to float it to the left. So if we go back to our live preview and see what that looks like, you can see now our navigation elements have gone up to the top, and this is floated left against the edge of that navigation section that we're contained or wrapped inside. So float left will push it to the left, and just like when you're working with Word documents, everything will wrap around it. Now if I go back to my CSS and I look at the unordered list and I apply a float to that, I can push it against the left here as well. So back into my CSS, I've already got nav ul, and I'm going to put float left there as well. And down in our live preview, of course you can see now our navigation section is pushed against the left. Equivalently, if I change that to right, you can see it pushes against the right edge of that nav section. So I'm going to leave that there for now. My mountain image is way too big, so I'm going to resize that. For efficiency purposes it would be best to resize that before you upload it, but I will show you how to do it using the CSS. And of course we can go back to our nav image section, and I'm going to change the height property, and let's try something small like 50 pixels, because we want this just to be a small logo in the top left of our screen. So there's the code for the nav image section. Floating to the left, it's a height of 50 pixels, and of course there it is on the left. I want to change a few more properties to change the positioning of that, so I'm going to put margin left, and I'll put it in 15 pixels from the edge so it's not right up against the edge of our website, and margin top to 15 pixels as well, so that it's a little bit down from the top. And there you go, you've got 15 pixels at the top and 15 pixels at the left. And now if we go back to our live preview, you can see that's looking pretty balanced now. The image is about the same height as the text that we've got here, little margins around the edge which is nice and tidy, and all of our navigation elements are still working as they should. So now just for demonstration purposes, let's play around with the float property on the image. So if it's on left at the moment, I change it to right. You can see it goes all the way across the right hand side on the right edge of our nav. I've got my UL also set to float right, but if I change that to left, it jumps across to left. So it's quite easy to swap around how all these things are going to work. I'm just going to undo that because I want it to go back to the way it was. So we've got it on the left and the navigation section on the right. Now, if we click on the About section here and we jump over to our About page, will that image be there or not? Just have a think about the changes we've made to the HTML and whether or not that will impact what's on this page. So you see when we click over there, the image is gone. And hopefully that's what you expected. Just like when we put in the class to change this line above here, we need to do the same thing for our About page, because of course previously we were only working in the index.html page and we need to apply those same changes. So all I need to do now is copy that line of code, that image, go into my About page, find exactly the same spot, so that's after the nav tag and before the UL tag, paste it in, and because again the CSS is linked, the same properties have applied, and now that's working nicely. So I'll press Ctrl-Alt-S to save all of my documents in brackets, and now I should be able to switch between Home and About and my Mountain Life pages, and it's working just fine. Notice in the Home page I have the break, so it wraps the text here, but in the About section I don't, so I'll go back up and just quickly change that by putting my BR tag in there, and you can see now it's working nicely. So this is a good reason, or a good example of why it's important to set up all of your HTML, your navigation components first before you copy them into other pages, because otherwise you can get into issues where you have to keep going back and forth like I'm doing here to make sure everything's consistent. But now that's what we've got. We've got our home page, we've got our logo on the left, and we've got our About page there. So that's it for this video. Just to recap what we've looked at, we've looked again at how you can add images. Thought really carefully about where exactly we're going to place that image within our HTML, and we've adjusted the image height using CSS. We've also looked at using float properties to align content either left or right and allow other content to wrap up against it. That's it for this section of the videos. We've looked at lots of different types of layouts, and then coming up we're going to have a look at how we can test and validate our HTML and then go on to building some new designs altogether.